Emulsion podcast.
You touched on something, and I want to circle back on it because I think it's really important that people who are first getting their toes into business ownership, being part of an opening team, there's like this big thing that's happening in Silicon Valley right now with software engineers where people are lowballing their salary and offering equity as upside to kind of bridge the gap because maybe they haven't gotten funding yet or whatever. And a lot of restaurants don't always get funding. Sometimes they are bootstrapped in some sort of way, or they're starting with a pop-up and then they're going to kind of scale up. Yeah. What should people, and you mentioned it a little bit, but I want to pull on that thread more. What should people keep in mind if they're offered equity in a business kind of relationship where they're getting hired or they got recruited and it's like, hey, there's equity on the table? I think everybody thinks that means it's good and it's always the same thing, but I've been in situations where it's not. So give some people some advice that they can use.
Yeah, especially, and I know we said if it's front of house or back of house here, and we see probably even more so now, I'm seeing back of house team members being offered equity first, but I think it's looking at the fine print and making sure there's a clear definition of what the equity means. What's the ability to sell your percentage of the business? Who's going to value the percentage of the business? I'm going through this with both of my companies. We have to value them right now based on the growth that we're having, and it's expensive. So you might not be able to pull that trigger as a minority partner. You might have the ability to be watered down, which is my biggest concern. And what that would mean is you own 10% or 5%, and as the startup restaurant or restaurant group needs to take on more cash, you end up, your 10% turns into 2%. And that's been the biggest risk when I see, especially independent startups, when there's 5, 7, 8 investors. It works for about 1 to 3 years, and sooner or later an investor comes back and says, I've had enough of this, I want my money back. And then the minority operating partners are the ones that get hurt as somebody pulls the plug on their cash.
And so I think what you're hopefully saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that it's okay to ask those questions. And so do you have any strategies of like, because it can be sensitive, right? Because the business owner is like, well, like this business isn't worth what like I don't have the cash to kind of pay out whatever equity stake that you happen to have right now, and so it can kind of get sensitive. So do you have any suggestions on like ways to approach that conversation, or sit the owners down or some of the majority equity owners down and have that conversation? Because I think people think that it has to be this timid, like, oh, I was offered equity, I should just take it, right? Yeah. But how do you approach that?
I think
make sure you get the information that you need.
And I think the key is to be curious. And one thing that I do see, even if a lot of owners, if they're putting in 5, 10, 15% equity stakes, a lot of it's golden handcuffs, which there's no problem with that. That's how I got involved in my first partnership, and it set me on the track that I'm in now. But I think it's going to the people that are presenting the opportunity and say there's 2 situations happening now. One is the offer, but one is I'm a young, budding entrepreneur. I just want to learn from what you've gone through. I want to be curious about what's worked for you and what hasn't. And I just want to be clear. I'm looking at, in this little home office here that I'm in today, I'm looking at a sign that says, from Brene Brown, clear is kind. It's literally right in front of my eyes. And inside it said, the more clear we can be will allow me to run forward and support your business as the operating partner. And say, I'm really here to listen more than I am here to comment. And again, just going back to my own experience, when I was offered 10% of the first company I got involved in, it was put at a $500,000 valuation. So it means that there's $5 million business there possibly, or more. And I'm like, the math doesn't make sense to me. And I got very emotional, and I handled the situation not as well as I could have, because I triggered the person who emotionally thought their business was worth $5 million. So I think as I mature, and if I could go back, it would just be, how do I stay curious a little bit longer? How do I feel comfortable? Because it's your future. And the managers listening to this, the managers are in shortage right now. The managers are the gold, not leases, not buildings, not equipment, not furniture. There's not even guests. Leaders to run restaurants are what's in short supply right now.
The Emulsion podcast.